Assalamualaikum. Hi, Manal.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Great. I just got my coffee and I'm all set for the event.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, I just need to sort out my desktop. Just give me a second. I've got way too much open.
Hey, assalamualaikum, Manal. It's Sean. Yeah, I'm just trying to get Zoom on my desktop as well. For some reason, it's not launching, so just bear with me for one moment.
Fair enough. Do you want to go? Do you want me to go ahead and share the screen? My screen?
Yes, please do.
I can't start sharing it while another participant is sharing. So
One moment, Raima. Yeah, you can stop sharing the poster. Yeah, perfect. And Raima, if you could just also give me co-host capabilities, and then I'll be okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
beautiful. Okay. This is going to be interesting. I haven't done Zoom with this. Okay, what is it that you see? Do you see my notes as well, or just the
Currently, I see the Into the Metaverse page, the Google Doc. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Awesome.
Awesome.
Recording in progress.
Okay, great. So I think we're just about ready. I think a few more people are going to be joining, but that's no worries. We can they can join as the event goes on. And we are streaming this on Instagram, Facebook, and I believe also we're going to be putting it up on YouTube. So we have a bunch of other people viewing it right now through those platforms. But yeah, thank you so much everybody for joining. It's probably one of the most exciting MyVoice events I'm going to be a part of since I've joined. And thanks primarily to Manal for giving her time on a weekend and allowing us to kind of pick her brains on what is the metaverse, the digital world, AI content, and all those lovely juicy topics. So thank you, Manal, and salam to everybody. Hello to everybody. So yeah, I think let's just get right into it then. Manal, whenever you're ready, we can.
Okay. Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, this is as good as it's gonna get. I did not do a tech check, so my apologies. But you know what? We're in here together. So good afternoon, and thank you for joining me today to have a conversation around the metaverse. I do not claim to be an expert, but my company is working in this space, and I am as much here to hear what you have to say about it as well. So, we'll be speaking about the metaverse, what it is, what it can be, why it matters. I would like to begin by acknowledging the First Peoples of the traditional territories on which I reside and work. The egregious history of systemic violence and cultural genocide inflicted upon them requires us to do better, so that we are able to rise up to the levels of generosity, respect, and kindness they continue to show us. It is my hope that this reminder carries forward in both physical and virtual spaces as we talk about the metaverse. I would also like to thank MyVoice Canada for creating this virtual space to have a conversation about the metaverse, and give major props to Cheyenne and Sean Mehdi for being hyper organized and patient with me as we work through the organizational elements of this event. I hope that in speaking about the metaverse, you can learn a little bit more about the work that my company is doing to evolve the entertainment industry as well, and maybe touch upon the creative opportunities afforded by artificial intelligence to express our identities within the metaverse. So if we can, let's begin. Okay. So, Assalamu alaikum. Like I said, I'm Manal. I am the CEO and co-founder for Transitional Forums. We're a startup based in Toronto. At my core, I'm a mom of 2 young kids. I'm also a systems change strategist. I look at systems more holistically. I come from the healthcare space originally. And after that, I helped build the Vector Institute, which is one of one of the world's premier machine learning institutes, and also implementing Canada's AI strategy. This is just a quick snapshot of where I've been and where I've been educated, but that's just to help orient some of you as to, my background is pretty varied. I've been educated around the world. I've been fortunate to work in public policy, healthcare, and AI research. And so I'm always a foreigner in any space I step into, including the metaverse. So we had these grand plans to set up a poll. Did not work as well as I was hoping, but I want you to look at these 4 images, and in the chat function, if you can use that, can people use the chat function? Yeah. Just a poll. poll. I'd like to understand what version of the metaverse, like how do you understand the metaverse? Are any of these images familiar to you? If you can, if you can put it into the chat function, I'd really love it. And I think somebody's going to be helping me read, because I don't know where the, oh, there it is. Okay, there, somebody put it into the chat. 2 is familiar. 2. Interesting. Huh.
So it looks like we have 3 2s or 4 2s and 4 1s.
Yeah, so let me walk you a little bit through this. This is
And 1.
4 is familiar. Yes, Edmund, 4 is very familiar. All right, so let me walk you through these 4 images, and it's important for you to understand where all these images are coming from. So one is, I think, just a general image that's been shared around these virtual worlds. Is coming from like this game kind of angle, where you have virtual beings and like spacecrafts flying around and big fantasy animated creatures. Number 2 is Mark Zuckerberg's launch of the metaverse, or Meta, a rebranding of Facebook and launch of Meta. And so that's the vision that they put forward of what the metaverse could be. 3 is just a general image of people stuck in their VR headsets, and that's like the gateway drug into the metaverse, or seen right now as a virtual, the way to enter these virtual spaces. And 4 is familiar because for those of you who've seen the Hollywood version of Ready Player One, I do highly recommend the book. And I'm not a reader, but that's a good book. But number 4 is from Ready Player One, and just the dystopia, like this dystopian reality of how the metaverse unfolds. So again, what I want you to understand is that all 4 of these images are informing our culture. And the cultural images that are also informing our understanding of the metaverse. The truth of the matter is there are various forms of the metaverse here, but it's still in development. With most things, I do appreciate Matthew Ball's definition of the metaverse that helps ground us as to what it is. Think about it as a massively scaled. I'll read this and then maybe we can talk about this as well. It's a massively scaled and interoperable network of real-time rendered 3D virtual worlds, which can be experienced synchronously and persistently by effectively an unlimited number of users, with an individual sense of presence and continuity of data, such as identity, history, entitlements, objects, communications, and payments. That is the most expansive definition of the metaverse that I found. And there are different pieces of it that are bolded. because I think those are characteristics of how we understand the metaverse to be, which is a virtual space that augments and coexists alongside our physical spaces that we live in. And so the key parts over here that I'd like you to remember are interoperable. So it does need, the metaverse still needs interoperability. So when you think about Meta and them putting a statement like, we need to have no walled gardens and share spaces so that we can move data assets around between different sandboxes or experiences or virtual worlds within the metaverse, that's where the interoperability comes in. The 3D virtual worlds is what gives it more depth. So it's not just the screens. And that's why you see the virtual reality goggles, right? Like that technology will improve with time. And so the metaverse doesn't just reside within virtual reality glasses. There's augmented reality. There's a whole bunch. XR will play a huge role in this. But it's not, there will be multiple ways to enter the metaverse, right? Like think about how you access the internet. It's not just through the computer screen. I mean, there are screens, but you have mobile, you have Internet of Things. So there are different ways to use the internet. There will be multiple ways to enter the metaverse, which is persistent. And that's another really important quality, is that these worlds need to be persistent and allow for anybody to come in and out for a seamless movement within this virtual space and environment. And so the core enablers of the metaverse right now, again, this is Matthew Ball, and I highly encourage you to check out a lot of his blogs and writing, because I think he's one of the people who's really taken the time to outline what he's seeing using his experience. Again, he comes from the entertainment world as well. So, sci-fi bridging into reality here, but he does have a number of really interesting essays if you're interested in finding out more. So what will enable this metaverse to exist are advances in hardware, advances in compute capacity. And I'll come back to why the compute capacity is important, because of the role artificial intelligence plays in this big narrative of the metaverse. Networking, how protocols work, virtual platforms, like where will these experiences take place? Right now we have Decentraland, Sandbox, all these like little digital spaces coming about. So what are the platforms? Who are the users on platforms? What will they be creating? What are the interchange tools and standards that allow these data assets created in one space to be moved around in the other? What are the payment services underlying this? And so the payment services, you'll see blockchain isn't like separated out in this core enabler, because blockchain is just one of many payment or services that enable you to move value around. But there are other uses of blockchain within the metaverse as well. And then finally, there will be contents and service and 3D and digital assets that will be moved around. Think about the physical world and how you move goods and services as well. And so as the metaverse becomes a space that we reside more and more in, all of these assets and services will become more important. Just a note on NFTs, because I feel like I need to touch upon this. There's been a lot of conversation around the role of, right now the metaverse and Web 3.0 has captured the imagination through the use of NFTs, more pudgy penguins, crypto kitties, bored apes, just a whole bunch. But as you can see, the NFT world is quite diverse. And so the ones that have made it into popular culture, like the manifestations that have made it into popular culture, are all these collectibles in the art form. But there are multiple areas where NFTs are being used. And we need to understand that NFTs are not in its end form right now. We'll see different ways of capturing value and economy within the metaverse. And so this is all evolutionary processes that are going to be moving the state of the technology into the metaverse. Excuse me.
I think Rahima just had a question. Just to kind of level set for her. I think she wanted to know what NFTs were.
Oh, yes, they're non-fungible tokens. Rahima, excellent question. So without going on into the technical sides of it, for which I am not completely qualified, but they're basically technological ways of cryptographic ways of claiming ownership over a digital asset. So that, it's just a way to register the value, ownership of a value within something that's created in a very simplistic format. It is far more complex than that, but I don't want to get into it here. But we can, if we want to have a conversation about NFTs, we can try to do that, and I'll try my best to navigate it. I'll provide you with sources to approach that.
I definitely have a question on that, but I'll save it for later on at the end of the event. I think everyone kind of has that one question of why is it valuable, but we'll get to that later afterwards.
Absolutely. So one of the things the metaverse will need is content. And so if you think about it, we take content in the physical world for granted. Right now, I'm in a shed in my backyard. I'm looking at a tree. I'm looking at fences. I'm looking at grass. I'm looking at houses. The virtual spaces will also need some form of content to stick to. In fact, you will not have thousands upon thousands of developers sitting and building this. Like right now, there's a version of the metaverse that is creating architectural spaces in the digital worlds, and we can talk about whether that's a fool's errand or not. We'll see, but it won't be thousands upon thousands of programmers. And by the way, this isn't. I apologize in advance to all developers. This is not a slight at you. This is just to really drive home the point that you can't have developers on every single experience on any single given day at any point in time, especially in a metaverse that is expected to be persistent. So the metaverse will need more dynamic content. And what we mean by dynamic content is content that evolves with you as you enter these spaces, content that remembers you as you enter these spaces. And so that is where my company comes in. We are Transitional Forms, and we are an innovation startup for dynamic media. And we're using creative machine intelligence, i.e. AI, to the creative potential of AI to evolve entertainment. And so we touch upon various different terminology that have been in popular media right now around the metaverse, virtual beings, synthetic media, creative economy, Web 3.0, and creative AI. But we use the power of story. So we use something that is fundamentally human. It is how we share experiences with each other. It is how our knowledge over centuries has been encoded and passed down. And we use story as a technology. So just like, computers have operating systems, humans have operating systems, and we believe that is storytelling. And so what we do at Transitional Forms is combine artificial intelligence with humans across the medium of dynamic entertainment, and use storytelling as the technology to help drive that relationship. To close the loop on something that is very core to AI, just like AI needs data so artificial intelligence needs a whole bunch of data to generate content. Content then needs culture to interact with it. People like you and me interacting with that culture to create the data that feeds AI. And so by creating dynamic media that allows you to interact with content in real time, change it, evolve it, we close that loop. And in a way, we help to reimagine AI research as it is happening right now. And this is where, STEM meets the arts as well. And just like science and technology evolves arts and culture and who we are as societies, arts and cultures can now transform science and technology as well. We released, sorry, go ahead.
Just one quick, I think someone else had a question in the chat. They were just asking, can you elaborate on your definition of content?
Yeah, of course. So actually, I can probably jump ahead. Content, I guess it would be important for me to understand what your understanding of content is. um, but in general, content's like anything that fills the space. Music can be content, sounds can be content, visual spaces can be content. Content can mean stories, but you were talking about architectural space, for example. Yeah, so there's physical content too. Like content is, think about it as anything that fills a space, right? It could be anything that appeals to the senses that fills a space. So it could be visual content. It could be like architectural content is, again, it's I'm not being very articulate here. It's still something that exists, that you can see, feel, touch, smell. In the physical world, everything around you is content, and that's what that's how I'm trying to feel. I'm not trying to be like social media content is a story, right? It's a piece of experience, or it's in a form that you can experience it, that helps you think through your relationship to that in a particular space. I don't know if that helps, Natalie. Natalie, you and I have to connect and have a longer topic of I'm being very expansive in my definition around content.
It's interesting when you mention architectural content. My mind instantly jumped to the virtual real estate and how people are buying plots of land online. So that's what I thought of. But yeah, we can discuss that.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, I mean, we take content for granted, but content does exist in multiple, and I'm taking a very expansive definition of like what content is. And you'll see as I go through my like just our properties at transitional forms, the different types of content. So we're using entertainment content right now to help drive experiences within the metaverse. So we did release a proof of concept, the world's first dynamic film at the Venice Film Festival in 2020. It is a virtual reality based experience, but you can also experience it on your PC. So do feel free to go ahead and experience this. But this was the first type of content or film content that allowed you to manipulate an environment that this is a three-way authorship kind of experience where the creative director set the world and set the rules of the world, but then there were little beings in this space that were independently artificially intelligent. And so you, as the user who entered this virtual space, were able to manipulate the environment, but you had to understand your responsibility in manipulating the environment, because it had an impact on these artificial beings that then reacted to the intervention that you made. And thereby, every piece of content you consumed over the time you spend in this virtual world is different. So it's a choose your own adventure, but the adventure itself has a mind of its own. And every single time you enter this world, you will never experience the same story as you did before. It's constantly evolving. Since agents, we have, oops. Oh, there is a trailer. Just to give you a quick view of what the image is. And I do want to open this up for more conversation. So I do, can you hear this at all?
Yeah.
So with this, we started experimenting with reinforcement learning. It was early stages of artificial intelligence use in the creative industry to co-create content. And now we're working on 3 additional properties since agents. One is Animal, which is taking the entertainment vertical space of gaming and applying reinforcement learning to it, which is an AI methodology. And then we have Transforms TV that plays Dinner Party. And I'll speak a little bit more to this because we are actually live streaming and live testing now if you want to catch it. It's a little weird, it's a little bizarre, but it's a lot of fun. And then we have Malachi, which is a generative music property. And so effectively, what we're doing right now in stage 1 of really combining AI and the cultural entertainment industries is take one entertainment vertical and one AI methodology, bring them together and see how they play out in terms of creating entertainment content that can be interacted with audiences and evolve in real time. So like I said, we have game. Dinner Party is television, effectively dynamic television that you can interact and change the content in real time. And Malachi is music and generative music properties. So how you can manipulate variables to create a new, so instead of composing songs based on individual lyrics or compositions of music, what you do is compose it based on an emotional curve. And then there's net new music generated against each of those emotional curves. And so the future of artists within these spaces is also going to change in how they interact with technologies. Animal, our game, there's a prototype that is available for download for free on itch. And I've asked Sean and Cheyenne to share this with the attendees, so you can go in and download it and effectively run this on your computer. Right now it's a prototype. We are in full game production, so there'll be like additional visuals and story behind it when we release our full game production that's in production right now. But just even this tutorial, this Animal Lab tutorial that's available on itch allows you to effectively use the power of your own computer to train neural networks and understand the principles of reinforcement learning. So rather than going into pages and pages of academic research, we've taken a lot of the cutting edge academic research and put it into this game experience so that you don't feel like you're studying, but you are learning around reward system designs and trade-offs that you make to go exploring versus exploitation. And so questions that come up that reinforcement learning researchers right now are struggling with as well, or working their way through.
Could you just give us a quick update on what reinforcement learning is?
Yeah, so it's similar to how you train puppies or children. Effectively, it's a way of developing executive function by rewarding certain behaviors positively and rewarding undesirable behaviors negatively. So right now, there are multiple ways in which machines and computers learn how they learn, how they compute data. And reinforcement learning is basically the next wave in it, where you're not just feeding it a bunch of data, but you're actually training the neural networks in real time by positive and negative reinforcement of reward functions. So if a computer is doing something that's, it's trying to optimize for a certain point system in order to do something, you're rewarding it with positive scoring. Whereas if the computer is doing something that you don't want it doing, you start taking you start giving it negative numbers and reward functions so that it gets away from the undesirable behaviors. And so in our game, the way it manifests itself, I'll speak over this. So in this frame, so in this sandbox, again, remember this is a prototype. Our new artwork's phenomenal. And so hopefully you'll all get the game and play it and learn how to reinforcement learn, but also enjoy the game while you play it. But in this training sandbox, what our robots need to do is they need to grab an axe. And so you train them using this menu function, whether, I love to grab axes, I love to chop down trees, and then you give it a point. You want to grab an axe and you give it 3 points, and you want to chop down the trees, it's 100. And so there's relative trade-offs as to what you want the robot to do as well. So that aligns the values of the robots with how to exploit the environment or go exploring within the environment. Again, I do encourage you to download the prototype, get in touch with me, and we can chat about this, join our Discord and stuff. There's a lot of really cool stuff coming down the pipeline with this. So I do want to get to the conversation. I've already talked about the music generator. This is Dinner Party. And so right now we're running it in a style. So remember when I said the metaverse needs to be persistent? We're trying to run this in a style where net new content is generated in real time with the power of natural language models. So these are AI models that are trained on text that generate language. And so you can see this on Twitch, and I have included a link. Yeah, there it is. There's a link up top there. You do have to sign it. Right now we're experimenting on Twitch, but we will be using, developing omni-channel distribution of this kind of content. The important part is this isn't static content. This is content that exists and is generated in real time. So we don't really know what our virtual beings are going to say at any given point in time. They're conditioned to, in certain ways, we do exercise prompt engineering. So we seed the opening lines, but then we let the language models, the AI language models, generate this in real time. So all of the show is generated in real time. We're trying to build up to 24-hour streaming. I think we've done about 3 or 4 hours at a time, and all these characters are talking to each other, pulling in. It looks zany. It is weird, but that's just because we're playing around, trying to figure out how to condition and fine tune these language models. But it does allow you to understand that it's AI. It's a fully autonomous AI generated TV station. So think about the metaverse, right? Think about how content gets generated in the metaverse and how you're going to enter it. Again, this is why you won't need multiple programmers. You need something that's persistently there, that's reacting to your input by anybody who enters it. And so in the metaverse, we just need to be mindful that there is a new breed of content creators. You are part of that new breed of content creators. And my good friend Natalie, who had just posed the questions earlier, she hosted a talk yesterday, and I was just blown away by one of her guests. He's a beatboxer that creates music with AI, Reaps One. And he said something that just, I'm seeing this over and over again, is that there is a whole generation that has grown up with the aesthetics of machines. And it is something that is intrinsic. The weirdos, the outcasts, and there are more of them. They're not the fringes, they're mainstream. They are that generation that is far more comfortable with this dialogue with machines and coexisting with machines and intelligent machines. And so, we are seeing a new breed of content creator on the horizon. Even just, these are 2 examples of how people are expressing themselves on the internet. The individual on the right is a very private person who doesn't like to, express the trauma that they've endured. So they feed the prompt into language models and allow the language models to then generate the narrative that then drives this generative art form. And so this visual, this is all AI generated art. This visual is created just through interaction with AI systems, right? To really enhance and self-express in a way that we can't do in the physical world necessarily, right? And as we exist more and more in virtual spaces, imagine the power of self-expression applied to things like Disney. I'm still waiting on and Jasmine was not a brown princess, but whatever. I'm still waiting on somebody to look like me to take over the world. And I want a powerful CEO, brown Muslim princess. That's what I want. But you know what? I don't have to wait for Disney anymore. This individual, Julia Wu out of Harvard, is creating, she's a musician, I think she's a music composer, and she's building a full length feature on a Korean Disney princess, and it's just brilliant. And it's people are collaborating with her outside of old production houses and whatnot, and she's crowdsourcing characters and musicians, and it's just I can't wait for this to be released once she gets through it. But she's using the power of AI to do this, and so I just want to wrap up here a little bit around the need for responsible AI and how it plays into our identity and our expression of culture. So there are two things. There's how AI is being trained. And it's being trained on snapshots right now of how various systems and people see us. And I don't have to say there's a huge lack of diversity in so many ways. You see this narrative repeated over and over and over again. And the data sets that are being used can be quite problematic. And so that's something that you need to be fully aware of, is that the experiences that are going to be generated by AI in the short term right now are going to view you in a certain way because of how systems in the physical world have viewed you and systematically discriminated against different populations or individuals, or made assumptions about them. But then there's also the power of expression, and how will you express your identities in virtual spaces using the power of generative AI as this technology evolves. And why should you care? This is I come from Pakistan. This is something that I care deeply about, because our entire physical identity, it's been digitized through this Nadra system. We have digital ID systems in Pakistan. And effectively, it was being used, the biometric ID system was being used to strip people of their citizenships because of how the AI was trained. And so there is an impact. This isn't just a virtual space. The virtual spaces start impacting you in the physical spaces as well. And so you need to think about areas like data ownership, where your data is residing, who owns your data, who's making decisions about the data. And so there's a lot of movement on the world stage that's happening around data protection rights. So if you've been thinking about the metaverse, all of these play into it as well. And finally, this is a website I encourage you all to check out as to the state of what today's AI can do just in your browsing in your browsing habits. I guarantee you that you will be blown away. Sit down, take 5 minutes to just go through and walk through. You will need a camera to capture you. I wish I could have done a live demo, but I want to open this up for conversation. But I would encourage you to sit down and understand this program. It predicts your sex, your gender, your age, just how you browse different data, heat patterns and heat mapping. So I do encourage you to check this out and look at and be blown away by just the state of where AI currently is, but also think about the assumptions it's making about your identity, your physical identity anyway, and how that translates into the virtual spaces that you will choose to identify with. So I do want to thank you for the opportunity, and I want to open this space up for conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Manal. That was there was a lot there, and I think I definitely have a lot of questions. I'm sure our participants have a few questions too. Please, everybody, think of if you have any questions right now, feel free to either raise your hand or post them in the chat. Otherwise, I had one question that I can start off with, and this kind of just goes back to what you're talking about when you're talking about reinforced learning.
Mhm.
So who is doing the teaching, right? Like who is going to be telling the AI what's good or what's bad or what, is the right answer. So I remember in one of our earlier discussions, we spoke about how um, AI is being fed content and they're being reinforced. Their reinforced learning is taking place in a certain way where it's also becoming biased itself, or some forms of AI is becoming biased. So, is there a fear for AI to be misused, and then in the metaverse, when that relates to the metaverse, would that be a fear for, let's say, minorities and our digital identity? Would we be kind of uh, maybe handicapped in a sense?
Yeah, so one thing I would encourage you to do if you are from a traditionally marginalized group is don't start with fear. I want to remove the word fear from this, and it's still early stages for the metaverse. And honestly, I think we need to make ourselves more visible and participate in the development of this space. So that's just a note on the side. That said, yes, there are real risks. Let me break this down. There are risks in the data patterns of how data is captured around individuals, right? And it's not just people from marginalized populations. Like there's intersectionality between gender and background, and the world is a complex place. And so the data captures that, right? Like a data point is an abstraction of how we interact in physical spaces. And so, yes, there are real risks captured within these AI models that we need to be aware of and tease out and understand. And I encourage you to follow people like Timnit Gebru out of Google. And by the way, she's established DAIR, DAIR. I'm happy to forward the link later, but it's a distribution of AI research. I believe, I don't remember, distributed AI research. And it's an institute that is really trying to push the boundaries of where and how these data sets are collected and the nuances of those data sets, as well as taking AI research out from traditional industry gated arenas and bringing it, democratizing AI research a little bit more. As far as the reinforcement learning piece is concerned, with our game, you are the person who trains the agents, right? Like there's this whole theory, this whole area around value alignment of reinforcement, value alignment in AI. It's like whose values are being considered in designing these AI systems. Reinforcement learning allows you to train the neural nets in real time or near real time. And so it has more to do with how you're interacting with it right now. That's where human computer interfaces and interactivity becomes really important, and understanding how certain people of certain backgrounds will react to the system versus other people from other backgrounds, other limitations, who has accessibility to that, how do people think. So there are all these different considerations that we do think about at our company as well. I hope that answers a little bit. I know it's not a direct answer, but I hope that answers some portions of your question.
Definitely. No, that definitely clears up a few of my thoughts. And yeah, I'm gonna have to do a bit more reading on my side and kind of, like you said, be don't come in with a mindset of fear. Be open and kind of try to understand everything there.
Now's the time to build, right? Like
Right.
I'm here to tell you, the metaverse isn't built yet.
Right.
The images that I put up there are just people who are trying to get ahead of, it's commercially driven. So they're all trying to get ahead of it. But the real work is being done on multiple levels right now, and we are building.
Awesome. I think Rahima had her hand raised. Rahima, do you have a question?
I have two questions, but for the sake of time, I will ask one. So I'm interested to know, can we use AI to catch criminals, whether that's cyber crime or in person? It doesn't necessarily have to be like blue collar crime or white collar crime, but if you're if you're in this metasphere, I think I just made that up myself. I want to give myself credit for that. And you're in this zone, and I'm guessing obviously the technology would be safe, but you can still track people. What is the scope for that? Because if we're talking about fear on the one hand, but I think that you could put it to a different use, right? The criminal justice system.
Yeah, so great area. This is something, on multiple levels. So let me give you a few examples, right? With artificial intelligence, data isn't just useless. The data is a proxy for certain interactions and certain behaviors that happen. So if you think about human trafficking in the world, there is data, like human trafficking is connected with money, large movements of money as well, that can be tracked through anomaly detection with artificial intelligence. And so there are different proxies you can use to combat crimes, right? Money laundering. Banks are experimenting with AI on anti-money laundering that is effectively associated with different criminal activities. Then there's surveillance technology, right? So now there's a negative of that as well, like facial recognition technologies that can mischaracterize different populations. So think about deploying that in warfare, and drone technologies, and mischaracterization of right now, even just forget AI, humans get put on on no-fly lists, and so they're like really standard names like Khan or Islam that get put on, and we have names that are repeatable, right? Just like Joe Smith, there are various Muslim sounding names that are on no-fly lists, and as humans we're just constantly subjected to like these problems in the real world, and so that's the risk side of surveillance technology as well. Like, what if the data that's being trained on is getting it wrong? Anyway, sorry, those are two sides of the same coin. Yes, there are positives, just like any form of technology. Technology inherently isn't good or bad. It's how it's used and deployed and who controls it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We have two other questions in the chat which are kind of interrelated. So Ahmed Javed asked, I wish to know how I can join in or be part of this new creative industry. And then Sawa Khan, she also mentioned she'd love to hear about your career and educational journey and how you got into this field, and if you have any advice for youth who are interested in pursuing this area as a career.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know which one to take first, because my advice will not come from lived experience, and my lived experience will definitely not flow from my advice.
You can start off with how can somebody join or be part of this industry?
Yeah. So I think with our company right now, what we're hoping that the content that we put out doesn't just exist on its own, is that we're hoping people will interact with it, and really understand and start learning and creating their own experiences with like advanced artificial intelligence. In terms of getting into it, again, it depends. Do you want to get into the creative industry? Do you want to get into the policy arena, of defining what terms of engagement with the metaverse are, but let's just keep it to the creative side. We hire a whole slew of different individuals. We have creative technologists, people who are both artists and learning code, or who are programmers, who are developers. 3D artists are there as well. So those are the predominant people we're hiring to create the experiences right now, experiment with them. But we do anticipate, like, use TikTok, use the technologies, understand what it is, right? And by the way, the job opportunities in traditional industries will be limited because they're not nimble enough to move quick to develop this. So there's a lot of self-learning and continuous learning that will need to happen, a lot of reading, find people to follow. Information is just so handy, but find a trail of trusted individuals that you can then start following and learning about all these different concepts. Startups are your best bet to actually go in and like test out all these really nifty technologies and your role within it. Wombo AI is a great example of something that's like easily digestibly downloaded. You can understand how AI models are being applied to pictures or art. Try to understand those spaces first. There are a whole slew of educational institutions trying to teach this as well, but a lot of this is self-motivated. A lot of the work that's being done in here is self-motivated, which brings me to how I came in here. I mean, you saw my pedigree. It's all in a very hardcore, like traditional academia. So while that has instilled frameworks of thinking for me, where I can discipline, I still have to function in the real world where there's corporate governance and laws that I need to function within. I need to understand that to establish the business and keep us afloat. But the actual pieces of the metaverse, listen, I'm reading. I don't claim to be a metaverse expert, but I do know that it matters that our voices, that my voice is there, is informing this. So I'm learning. I'm learning every single day about it through reading, through people putting out different thought pieces, and actually not just consuming it, but like really like looking at it from the lens of like my own experiences. Does this make any sense, or is this just like commercial garbage?
Awesome. And yeah, thanks for plugging in my voice as well in that answer.
Yeah.
No, that was great. I think so. Kind of what I'm hearing is that do a lot of reading on your own, kind of take those steps to kind of keep learning about this field. And startups is a good area to kind of be in if you kind of want to be a part of the story.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Natalie, for your questions and for participating. Yeah, Marima, we definitely have time for one more question. Did you want to go for it?
I have a burning question that I've wanted to ask since I learned that you would be here. And this is not coming from something I believe personally, but when you're talking to Muslim communities,
Mm-hmm.
or especially elders in our community, how do you reconcile the idea of this entire virtual sphere with prophetic teachings or what's taught in the book? How do you kind of reconcile those two?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I don't have a neat answer for you. I think for me, and this is a personal journey, right? Like for me, Islam has always existed. My religion has always existed as a value system rather than like the explicit teachings of the religion. And so there are huge pieces of Islam that are embedded in kindness, generosity, openness, acceptance, right? And I believe bringing those values into the metaverse is just as important. I mean, at my company, we're really pushing forward on the frontiers of enhancing human machine empathy. Now it's not that machines are sentient beings or like they're Muslim or Jewish or Christian or whatever, right? Like, but they are beings that have been created in certain way, whatever. It's an embodiment of machines and gears and whatever. But I think treating manifestations of the imagination, of human imagination in these virtual worlds with respect and dignity is part and parcel of Islamic teachings. I don't think there's anything, at least not to my knowledge, that doesn't, sorry, that hinders the advances in the metaverse, right? Like what AI and the metaverse allows us to do is actually expand the capabilities of our imagination. In the physical world, we are limited by the embodiments of what the physics of our bodies can do as well, or time and space. But within virtual worlds, you can bend those old physical spaces to explore and augment the intelligence that you have. Whether it's through music. Again, I wish you guys could check out the Reaps one talk yesterday. And like, this guy's a beatboxer who's like expressing, he had a really hard life and he expresses himself through like different sounds. And to me, that's beautiful. And to me, that doesn't fly in the face of religion. I don't think there's anything to reconcile there. I just think it's a natural extension of who we are.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any more other questions from the other participants? Because I have one, but I'll hold off and I'll let somebody else ask a question if there is. Now's your chance. You're not going to get a chance to speak to someone like Manal every day. So
You can email me. My email's literally there.
but live is always better, right? If there's no other question,
I have a question.
sorry.
I want to.
Yes.
I want to know. I want to know if anybody on the call, was there something that they really were surprised by, or were taken aback by, or a new thought that just came up while I was talking?
That's a good question. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think I was overwhelmed by how expansive the metaverse is. And I found that quite intimidating, to be honest. I found that quite intimidating, and not in a bad way. It's just, I was like, just a little bit blown away.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I came into this event very open-minded and having very little interest, but thinking, oh wow, this could be used for this purpose or that purpose. And in the back of my mind, I had all these sorts of ideas, thinking that this could be really useful for teaching people with exceptional needs. I was thinking a lot in terms of mobility. So like you said, technology isn't inherently good or bad, it's how you use it. So I think I'm excited to see how we could use it.
Beautiful.
Ahmed had a point. He said the film, that was a first for him. So I think, I guess as other people also feel the same way, I don't think we've seen a reactive film or AI generated film in that sense. That's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminded me of, I'm not sure if it's related, but when we were little, we used to play games, which is kind of like, or even books, like build your own ending or build your own storybooks, where you kind of pick certain actions and then that leads to a specific result or a specific ending of the book or the game. So it kind of made me think about that a little bit.
Yeah, so this is actually a riff on that, because that's branch narratives with like certain end states that you have to figure out, right, before you put that piece of content out there. So like a choose your own adventure book. So yeah, you need to like map through sensical like lines to different outcomes. But the beauty of the work that we do, it's a choose your own adventure where the adventure chooses itself. Because we don't have to think of the end point. We just basically have emergent narrative that could go on forever. It's persistent and perpetual, potentially.
Right. Yeah. Ahmed's mentioning the responsive interactive part of the film was very new is new to him, and yeah, I agree. I think it's pretty cool how the movie moves forward based on your responses and how you kind of interact with it, which is very interesting. And I guess, do you see that happening more and more? Or are people going to be delving into that in the film industry, in the arts, kind of make things a bit more personal?
Absolutely. Like the road to interaction is a holy grail right now. And this is, if you see the metaverse being talked about, everybody's talking about NFT, like that's popular conversation is NFT and whatnot. But again, we are building. Now we build. And so it is going to be the interactivity in real time. It's not like in the virtual space, it will be the computers. It will be the machines that are computing, your will, your desire. You control the narrative as somebody entering the space. But it will be the machines, right? And you have to make them intelligent, and in making them more empathetic to us, hopefully they'll be kinder. These spaces will be kinder to us.
Awesome. So hopefully nothing like a Terminator 1 situation going on.
I'm hoping to avoid any of that. Yeah.
So I thank you so much. I think we're kind of a few minutes over the time. I just had one small quick question, and you don't have to expand on that too expansively. But you mentioned NFT just in the beginning and just now as well. So a lot of people have this question of why or how is it valuable? We understand the non-fungible aspect, that it's a unique identity,
Mhm.
but what exactly makes it unique and valuable?
Yeah, it's human greed. Actually, it's scarcity. It's the idea of artificial scarcity. So when something is scarce, you want to get it. Now that said, that's a very basic baseline form of it, right? There's also like the value creation, what you can do now with the NFTs. And again, if you think about just the art collectibles, what if you could bring them to life? Our technology, it effectively enables you to bring your little JPEGs to life, have conversations, exist in worlds. So that can also drive, and so people like Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis are investing heavily in the space through Orchard Farms, and they've got a TV show right now that has it's a non-fungible token for the episode. So it's around ownership. And that's why I started this talk off with an acknowledgement for the land that we reside on. We think we own this land, but that ownership is based on a system of legal precepts that give you a piece of paper and say you own the land, but this land is stolen. So effectively, what is ownership in the physical worlds? And that translates into the scarcity that drives up the value. But inherently, philosophically, there is literally nothing that makes it valuable. It's just people who at present who are speculating on the artificial scarcity that's introduced.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Okay.
Any final questions? Otherwise, I think we can end it off here. Thank you so much, Manal. I think you've exactly. I think everyone should give a huge round of applause. We'd love for you to, continue interacting with us, communicating with us, because I'm sure we're going to continue to learn a lot from you. We'd love to be a part of, any sort of AI projects that you may have where you need some sort of responses, or you need, someone to test anything. We'd love to help you out in any form that we can.
Oh my God, I would love for the team to test a lot of the stuff. Again, join our Discord channel.
Okay.
Subscribe to our Twitch TV channel, because then you'll get a news every time we go live, and it's kind of bizarre to see it run live. You're literally the only person. I mean, you're literally watching this. You're not the only person. Everybody else on it is also watching it unfolding.
Right.
This whole story is unfolding de novo in front of your eyes. And you can manipulate it. I mean, we're getting to the interactivity part right now. We're just trying to see stability test the system, but you can manipulate stories being told in animated form in real time with emotions. What? Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Bhai, can you just link the Discord channel as well in the chat so everybody can join that if they want to? I think we have it.
Slide deck.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Linked address. I think so. God, I feel like such an old lady when I'm trying to work.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you so much for the invitation. I just want to leave you with a final closing remark, if I could, and that is that your voice does matter. please show up. Do not go into this with fear. It is normal to feel overwhelmed, but the metaverse is just being built. And with it comes a huge opportunity to right the wrongs that have taken hold in physical spaces. Be kind, be generous with your time, and really, let's build a better world virtually than we had in the physical world.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Manal. Really, really appreciate your time, all your insights. Thank you, everybody who attended today, for all your questions. Thanks, everybody who's watching on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And yeah, this was incredible. And hope to see everybody again sometime soon. And have a great rest of your Saturday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Okay, call.